Have you ever wondered if you are truly on the right path to salvation? The Bible is clear in stating that not everyone will enter the kingdom of heaven. And there are 7 groups of people that, according to Scripture, God cannot save. That's right. Maybe you're asking yourself, do I belong to one of these groups? The answer might be closer than you think, and that's why it's so important to pay attention until the end of this video. Before we begin, I want to hear from you. Which group of people do you think we'll encounter in this video? Leave your comment below and share your opinion. Today, we will explore these 7 groups and understand why they are outside of God's grace. And more than that, we will discover how you can ensure that your life is aligned with the plan of salvation that Jesus Christ offers us. What's at stake here is the eternity of your soul. So don't waste a second, because what you're about to learn today could completely change your eternal destiny. If you believe in the transformative power of the Bible and in Jesus Christ as the only way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Tires on wet asphalt, and then nothing. The next thing I knew, I was no longer in the car. It was as if I had been pulled out of my body. There was no pain, no fear, just an overwhelming sense of calm. I hovered above the wreckage, looking down at my own lifeless body. I could see the twisted metal, the smoke rising from the engine, but it all seemed so distant. The panic of the crash didn't touch me. Instead, there was an overwhelming warmth surrounding me, as if the universe itself was cradling me in its embrace. As I drifted further away from the scene, I realized I wasn't alone. A presence, comforting and familiar, surrounded me. I couldn't see a figure, but I could feel it. This divine presence that seemed to understand me on a level deeper than anything I had ever known. It wasn't speaking to me in words, but I knew that this was not just a random moment. It was something more, something significant. The voice in my heart whispered that I had a choice now, whether to stay or return. Everything around me felt timeless. The storm that had been raging just moments ago was now completely calm. I was weightless, suspended in a space between worlds. I didn't know where I was, but it felt as though I had been transported to a realm of pure peace, where nothing could harm me. It was like standing in the presence of God, bathed in His love and light. For the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace with everything, with myself and the world around me. All the doubts and fears that had plagued me were gone, replaced by an overwhelming sense of certainty. I didn't want to leave, but at the same time, there was a quiet urging within me, a pull to go back. As I reflected on my life, on the choices I had made, I began to understand something important. I wasn't finished yet. There was still work for me to do. I didn't know exactly what it would be, but in that moment I understood that my life had purpose. A purpose that was far greater than anything I had ever imagined. And so I made my choice. I would return. Suddenly I felt a force pulling me back. Gently, but unmistakably. The calmness that had surrounded me began to dissipate, and I felt a rush of emotions, the sensation of returning to my body. It was as if I was being pulled into a tight space, back to the physical world, where the pain and exhaustion awaited me. I remember the first sensation as I returned, the cold air on my skin, the sound of distant sirens, the metallic smell of smoke in the air. But even in that chaos, there was something strangely reassuring about it. I was alive. Opening my eyes, the first thing I saw was the flashing lights of emergency vehicles. The world was blurry, but I could still make out figures moving around me, shouting instructions, trying to help. I could hear their voices, but they felt so distant, almost as if I were underwater. I tried to speak, to tell them I was okay, but my body wouldn't cooperate. I was weak, disoriented, and barely able to move. Yet, in the midst of it all, something else was happening. The warmth I had felt before was still with me, though it now felt more like an ember. Quiet, but steady. My heart was beating again, but it wasn't the same frantic thumping it had been before. This time it was slow, measured, as if I were being reminded to breathe, to live, to cherish every moment. The light that had enveloped me in that other realm was still there. Not in the physical world, but in my heart, in my soul. It was as if a door had been opened inside of me, a door to a deeper understanding of life and faith. The paramedics rushed to stabilize me, and as they worked, I couldn't help but think about what I had left behind. I had experienced something that most people only dream of, a glimpse beyond the veil, a brush with eternity. And in that brief moment, I realized something profound. This life is fleeting, but it is also beautiful. Every second is a gift. It wasn't about the physical pain or fear I had just experienced. It was about the time I still had to do something meaningful with my life, to make a difference in the world. I began to feel my body again, the aches and pains returning as the adrenaline wore off. But alongside the discomfort, there was a quiet strength that had settled within me, a sense of peace that had never been there before. I realized that, in a way, I wasn't just coming back to my body, I was coming back with a renewed purpose. I had a second chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. As the days passed, I began to understand the magnitude of what had happened to me. The crash, the near-death experience, the overwhelming sense of peace. It all felt like it had been a divine intervention, a wake-up call. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I'd been given a glimpse of something far greater than I had ever imagined, and it wasn't something I could simply brush aside. I knew my life was no longer going to be the same. At first, I tried to continue my routine as if nothing had happened. But it didn't take long for me to realize that my old way of living no longer fit who I had become. I started to see the world differently, more clearly, more deeply. I noticed the little things that I had previously overlooked. The smile of a stranger, the beauty of the sunrise, the sound of laughter shared between friends. The world was more vibrant now, and I was more connected to it. Most importantly, I began to see the people around me in a new light. I had always cared for others, but now I understood the true meaning of compassion. I understood the weight of a kind word, the power of a helping hand, and the importance of offering forgiveness. What I had learned in that moment of surrender wasn't just about my own life, it was about living for others. I couldn't help but feel a deep urge to serve, to help those in need, to be a source of light for others as I had been given light in my time of darkness. But even more profound was the change in my relationship with God. I had always believed in Him, but now I knew Him. I had experienced His presence, His love, and His peace in a way that was beyond words. I didn't need to see Him in physical form to know He was with me. It was like a constant whisper in my heart, a reminder that He was guiding me, loving me, and holding me in His embrace. I began to pray more, honestly, deeply, with gratitude and humility. My prayers weren't about asking for things anymore. They were about thanking God for the gift of life, for the second chance I had been given, and for the opportunity to live with purpose. I began to understand that life isn't just about surviving, it's about living with intention, with love, with faith. I didn't know exactly where this new path would take me, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't walking it alone. With each passing day, the weight of my near-death experience became clearer. I was no longer just walking through life, doing what was expected of me, going through the motions. I had a new sense of urgency, a new drive to live my life in a way that honored what I had been shown during my time beyond the physical world. I began to understand that my purpose was not just to exist, but to make a real difference. The change wasn't just internal, it had to be external too. The first step was to start small. I began with the people closest to me, my family, my friends, even my colleagues. I started to really listen to them, not just hear them. I made an effort to show more kindness, more patience, and more understanding. If someone needed help, I would offer it without hesitation. If someone was going through a tough time, I would be there for them. not just with words, but with actions. I had learned that love isn't just an emotion. It's something we give freely, without expecting anything in return. But it wasn't just about helping the people in my immediate circle. I began volunteering at local shelters, spending time with those who needed companionship, guidance, or even just a warm meal. There was something deeply fulfilling about being able to offer myself to others in such a meaningful way. I could see the impact my actions had, even if it was just in the smallest of gestures. A smile, a conversation, a hand reaching out in kindness. It was all part of something much bigger than I had ever understood before. I wasn't just serving others, I was serving God. I also began to reflect on my career and my role in the larger world. I realized that my work, my profession, was not just a means to an end. It was another way to express my values, to bring light into the world. I took steps to align my work with my faith, ensuring that my actions were consistent with the values I had embraced. I didn't want to be successful for the sake of success. I wanted to succeed in a way that was meaningful, that contributed to the greater good. And through all of this, my faith only grew stronger. I found myself seeking deeper understanding, studying scripture more, attending church services with renewed passion, and sharing my journey with others. I understood that faith isn't something we keep to ourselves. It's something that's meant to be shared, to be lived out loud. I wanted others to experience the peace, the purpose, and the joy that I had found. I wasn't just living for myself anymore. I was living for something far greater. As time went on, I realized that the journey I had started after that near-death experience wasn't just a phase, it was a new way of life. The changes that had taken place within me were not temporary. They had become a permanent part of who I was, and I felt more aligned with my true purpose than ever before. It was as if a veil had been lifted, and I was now able to see the world and myself with greater clarity. The sense of peace I had felt in that moment beyond this world was now a constant companion, guiding me through every challenge and decision. Looking back, I understood that this wasn't just about surviving an accident or overcoming fear. It was about being given a second chance to live a life of purpose and meaning. Every day became a new opportunity to act on the lessons I had learned. I no longer took life for granted. The small, seemingly insignificant moments were now the ones that held the most value. The laughter of my children, the quiet moments of reflection, the beauty of a sunset. All of these things now felt sacred. And the best part? I had learned to forgive. Truly forgive. There had been times in my life when I held grudges, when I let resentment build up inside of me. But after that experience, I realized how unnecessary and destructive it was to carry such burdens. Forgiveness wasn't just something I did for others, it was something I did for myself. Letting go of anger and pain freed me to embrace love, to embrace peace. I had been given the gift of a fresh start, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. My relationship with God was no longer distant or abstract. It was intimate, real, and transformative. I spoke to Him as if He were right there with me, because I knew He was. I wasn't just praying for what I wanted or needed. I was giving thanks for the life I had, for the people in my life, and for the opportunity to serve others. My faith had become the foundation of everything I did, every choice I made. It wasn't a part of my life. It was my life. I knew that the path ahead wouldn't always be easy. Life would continue to challenge me, as it always does. But now, I faced those challenges with a sense of purpose, with the strength that comes from knowing I am never truly alone. My experience had taught me that life is a gift, and it is up to us to make the most of it, to live with intention, to love deeply, and to walk in faith. And as I moved forward, I knew that I was not just surviving anymore. I was thriving, embracing every moment, and living for something greater than myself.